The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our August 3rd Thursday webinar. I'm Margot Hoffman with the Partnership for Excellence, and on behalf of the California Council for Excellence, the Oklahoma Quality Foundation, Partners in Performance Excellence, Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence, Sterling International, and the Partnership for Excellence, we welcome you to this webinar. We're really excited to have Ralph Peterson here today to talk about mastering QAPI, and he's going to do it in a format that's a little bit different than what you're used to seeing, so we're excited about that. We are recording this session, and I will send you the link afterwards if you'd like to go back and review it. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you can type your question in the question box and we'll make sure that Ralph gets that question. We have a few announcements before we introduce Ralph and get the session started. So first of all, if you haven't seen the announcement, we have an exciting announcement to make. And that is 3 of our alliance programs have merged together to form a stronger, bigger alliance program out west. So we have the Quality New Mexico program, the Southwest Alliance for Excellence, and the Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence merging together to be one large program that covers 8 states. It will initially be called Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence, but look for rebranding. So you may have noticed that we are now having Rocky Mountain as one of our sponsoring programs, since we've had Quality New Mexico and the SWAY program on board for many years. I also want to remind you that the programs that support your states have activities going on throughout the year. And if you're interested in engaging in those activities, please go to the events page for those programs that are relevant to your location. I have a couple announcements on some of the upcoming events. So let's first talk about the Partnership for Excellence has our Quest for Success conference just in a little over 2 weeks in September at The Ohio State University. We have pre-conference workshop, our awards banquet, and then a full day of best practice sharing with our conference. So it's not too late to register. We'd love to have you join us. Also coming up is the Baldrige Conference put on by the Alliance for Performance Excellence. That will be taking place at the Sheraton downtown in Denver in October from the 13th through the 15th. So that's another great opportunity to see best practices and learn from innovators and professionals that are just introducing cutting edge strategies. I'd also like to thank our organizational members who help us do the work we do. And we couldn't do it without their support. So thank you to those organizational partners that support our programs. I'd like to introduce Kim Kinder. I know Kim has an announcement to make from the California program, and she's going to introduce our speaker.
Good morning. I am Kim Kinder. I'm with the California Council for Excellence, and it is an honor to let everyone know that on September 12th, we will be co-hosting a sharing day at the Charter School of San Diego, our 2-time Baldrige winner from 2015 and 2021, and you will have access to some fantastic innovations that they have implemented and learn all about how the wonderful executive leadership team has implemented all the Baldrige strategies throughout the organization. And so now it is my great pleasure to introduce Ralph Peterson. Ralph is a nationally recognized expert in quality assurance and performance improvements, as we all know, is QAPI. Additionally, Ralph is a master examiner for AHCA, the American Healthcare Association's Quality Award Program. He is also the founder of his own management services consulting organization. He's helped hundreds of senior care centers design and implement award-winning QAPI programs. And as we all know, this drives operational excellence, reduces costs, and improves care outcomes. So he brings with us 20 years of leadership experience. He has a master's degree in organizational leadership and brings a unique results-driven approach to transforming compliance-driven systems into proactive, high-performing quality frameworks. And as you're about to see, Ralph is known for his energetic, no-nonsense style, and he brings a passion for helping leaders achieve excellence. Thanks for being with us today, Ralph.
Thank you all. Can you see me okay?
We can.
Well, all right. Thank you so much. I am going to ask, as I go through today's session, to take good notes. I know this is being recorded. I know that you can watch it and share it, but there's a lot of great evidence out there that there is this great connection between your brain and a pen in your hand. If you do both, you're going to get a lot more out of this session. So I'm going to draw and talk at the same time. So I would just recommend everything that I write, you write. By the way, sometimes I end up talking fast, which means you also have to listen fast. This is all about mastering QAPI. And when I start looking at working with centers all over about quality assurance, I like to start with this image right here. This is a picture drawn by a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old was asked to draw a picture of where they live. That was the only instruction. Draw a picture of where you live. This 5-year-old drew a picture that represents what a lot of 5-year-olds see or think of when they consider where they live. As you can see, first and foremost, I'll point out the obvious. This is the 5-year-old in question. The reason we know, I should write that in red just so you see where I'm writing. The reason we know that this is the 5-year-old in question, because a 5-year-old puts themselves in the center of every picture. When you ask them to draw a picture of their family, they will always be front and center. So this 5-year-old looks like they live in their family room. They live, when they think of where they live, they think internally inside their home. Very fascinating, because if we ask that same question, or give the same instructions to a 6-year-old, draw a picture of where you live, this is the illustration we get. Look what has happened. In 1 year's time, the 6-year-old's perception has changed from being inside their house to now they are outside their house. They're, look, this is my house and I live right next to a tree. They go from internally seeing where they live to externally being able to identify it. If we ask a 8-year-old, just 2 short years up from the 6-year-old, this is an illustration that we get. This was drawn by an 8-year-old who was asked to do the same thing. Draw a picture of where you live. Now, all of a sudden, we get some really, really interesting things here. Number one, we see that they're externally looking at their house. That's great. But here's what's really interesting. They also give us a comparison. Not only do they draw their house, but they draw their neighbor's house. And I don't know if you can tell by looking at this picture, but they live on a hill, and maybe in Denmark somewhere, because those are pretty large tulips. And this is their mom coming to get them for some sort of an event. This is them and their friend with a tree. An 8-year-old's perception from a 5-year-old to an 8-year-old is a world of difference. They give a comparison, they're showing external, they're even given placement, geographical placement of their home. They're giving us a mood setting. They're like, hey, it's always sunny over here and rainbows and beautiful clouds. The difference between a 5-year-old's perception of living internally to an 8-year-old's perception of not only showing their house, but showing a comparison. Now we move to a 13-year-old's drawing. Look at this. A 13-year-old given the same instructions as the 5-year-old. The 5-year-old was asked, hey, draw a picture of where you live. And the 5-year-old drew internally. This is a 13-year-old. Not only do they give us a bird's eye view of where they live, which, by the way, I don't know which house is there or which apartment is theirs, but they give us many comparisons, not just one comparison. They give us many comparisons. They give so much context. They live on a busy street, so busy, in fact, that they have to have a crossing guard. And I think at first I thought this was maybe Santa falling over. It's probably a park bench. It is really, really fantastic. And what we are seeing here is the maturity level of the children. That's an important concept, because when we're looking at QAPI, quality assurance programs, when we're judging quality award applications, we use the word maturity. How mature is the application? Is it a first time this is their first time applying, their first time with the language, the first time with the criteria, or have they moved past the first time and have they matured over time and actually started to see their answers in response to the criteria differently? It is quite an astounding study. And we'll do a little bit of this exercise together. But if I was working with you and your team in person, I would do a map making activity, and I would simply ask you to draw a map. And indeed, if you wanted to take a minute and draw a map, and we're talking about a street map. So all I would be asking you to do is imagine that you work or you live here. Imagine this is your house. And I want you to take 3 stops. I want you to go from your house, draw a map wherever you get coffee. A red's not going to work with this map. Wherever you get coffee, and then let's say then you have to drop off your kids at school, and then from there you have to get to work, wherever work is. And again, I do this when I'm doing live trainings with people, in person with teams, and I have them draw a map. Just draw a street map. Just take a few minutes, draw a street map. And I want you to include these 3 stops. Stop to get coffee, even if you don't drink coffee. Stop at a convenience store. Stop at school, even if you don't have kids. Go to where the school is. Draw a map to where you get to the school. And then get to work. And then what I would usually end up with is a bunch of variations. Some people are really take their time and they're drawing every detail. And then some people are like, I live on the same street that I work on. So this is my house, down here is work, and it's one red light and I'm there, Sometimes it's super complicated. Sometimes it's not complicated at all. And so we'll have a map that looks kind of like this. This is my map. If I were to draw where I live, my house, and then I'm going to change my color to blue. My house here, and then this is where I get Starbucks, and this is the school I drop the kiddos off, and this is where I work. What I would typically do is I would ask all the participants, once they drew their map, hand it to their neighbor. And then I would ask their neighbor, looking at the map that your colleague just drew, what's the likelihood you could get from point A to point B? And you'll see an awful lot of explanation going on. All of a sudden, your partner beside you will be going like, well, actually, and they'll start making adjustments. Okay, well, you should have known that this is number 60 Elm Street. That probably, and actually, I live in Roslyn. So if you didn't, and I'm in New York, by the way. So without me giving you the address of where I live, I mean, first of all, you're so lost, right? So we need this starting point. So the starting point is here, and then it'll be like, oh, okay, so you know what would have helped? I should have drawn arrows, right? So you go up this way, and then this way, and then this is actually like a little drive-through, and then you come down here and you have to take a right on Walnut, and you come down, and then the school, you have to loop around. You're seeing this in real time. People are explaining to each other. But the point is, if you just gave somebody the map without the explanations, the first time that you do this exercise, not always, but most of the time, nobody could follow your map. Because there's this thing called, in teaching, there's something called the burden of education, which means that you have to try to take into account what your expectations, what other people already know. And because you don't know, if you don't know where 60 Elm Street is in Roslyn, there's no chance you're going to be able to find anything on this map. Is that fair? And so what we'll end up doing is going, you know what? Let's scrap this map idea. Let me just give it to you like this. Just start on 60 Elm and then take a left. So you're on Elm, take a left on Elm, take a left on Birch, take a right on Woodbury. And if I were to ask you which would be easier to follow, a map that looked like this or a map that looked like this, most of us would say this is a better representation. And in fact, this is how all GPSs work nowadays. A GPS, when I was a kid, when some of you maybe were kids, we actually had maps in our car, like a big atlas book where we would literally pull over and go, wait, we're here. We need to go up here. But we got it all reduced down. So instead of this map reading ability that we used to all have, we now just follow these turn-by-turn instructions. And what could make these turn-by-turn instructions even better is if we added miles. So you're 0.3 miles here, and then 0.5 miles here, and then go 1.2 miles on this road. The drive-through is on the right, and then it's 6 miles on the right. Like if I had not only the turn-by-turn, but I also added the mileage, you could see that this would be a lot easier to find your way. There's something interesting, though, that we didn't consider in this first little rendition here that I made. Let me erase all my chicken scratch. And that is whether or not you could, let's say that you could confidently, because you're familiar with my neighborhood, let's say that you could follow my map just like the way it is. The real question then is, when should we leave the house? Like if you're going to do this for me, hey, go by my house, grab my kid. There's a Starbucks right up the road. You can get coffee and then drop my kid off and then get to work. When should you leave my house? And if you ask that question, then the first logical question you would ask is, what time do you need to be at work? And so so I have to be to work at 8 a.m. So then you would go backwards and go like, okay, if you have to be to work at 8 a.m., well, when's the next time? What time does your kid have to be at school? And for me, there's no too early, but there is a too late. So it has to be by 7:15. So the kid has to be dropped off by 7:15. You can drop them off earlier, but no later. So then the next logical question would be then, okay, if I'm leaving school and going up, following the road to work, how long does it take to get from the school to work? And in this case, it's 35 minutes. So I could easily drop the kid off by 7:15 and get to work in 35 minutes, which would be 7:50. So that's great, right? But if, let's say it was not 35 minutes, but 55 minutes, well, that means I would drop off the kid at 7:10 because I would need that other 50 minutes, or actually 7:05. I'd probably give myself a 5-minute window, right? So then you go, okay, so if you know I have to be to work at 8, if you know I have to be to work at 8, or you would have to be to work at 8, and you have to drop the kid off at 7:15, what time would you leave the house? Well, you still don't have enough information. You'd have to go, well, how long does it take to get from your house to Starbucks? And let's say it's 5 minutes. And then you go, okay, how long does it take normally to get to Starbucks? Well, I live in a pretty busy suburb on Long Island. And you can probably, good estimate is about 10 minutes. So 10 minutes. And how long does it take to go from Starbucks to the school is another 5 minutes. And I'll do the math for you. That means you'd have to leave your house by 6:50 a.m. in order to have enough time to get coffee, drop your kid off at school, and get to work on time. That timeline is super important because without the timeline, we wouldn't know what time we need to leave, what time we need to get to any other places. So now imagine this. Imagine if you were all set, you knew the timeline, by looking at the map, you could get there. You have the turn-by-turn instructions. No big deal. You have the turn-by-turn instructions and you have the map. However, when you take a left on Birch and you go up, all of a sudden, the road is closed. There is a crash right on the corner of Birch and Woodbury. You cannot get through. You can't get coffee. You can't bring your kid to school. And you certainly can't get to work. What do? Well, anytime my employees, most of the time, my employees are faced with this, like, hey, we have to go do something, but something else is preventing them from doing it. I have a lot of employees who unfortunately just don't do anything then. They'll be like, well, I tried, but I couldn't get there. Like, we don't want that to happen. what would be helpful is if you took a step back. Imagine if you could take a step back from this map and see a bigger view of the map. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, so here's the crash on Woodbury, but because I can see a better view of this map, instead of going left on Birch, if I went right on Birch, I could go down to Post Road and then find my way up Walnut, hit Starbucks, drop off the kid, and still be able to get to work. I hope you're seeing the value of this, because what I just did was I created a job routine. This is all this is. A job routine is simply a set of instructions. The question about job routines, however, is when there's a problem with the job routine, when there is a gap, when there's an accident, or there's a road closure for any reason, how do you know how can you ensure that your staff can still get the job done? If this makes sense to you, and I hope it does, what I'd like to do now is I'm going to now draw QAPI. And for this, I really want you to draw exactly what I draw. Please follow along. Whatever I draw, you draw. We're going to draw QAPI. And we're going to do it by drawing a little bit of a map. So first, I'm going to make two houses on either side of my paper. This is the QA house, and this is the performance improvement house. Draw a fence down the center of your paper, dividing two houses. Now, the thing about these two houses is they both live on dead-end streets. The QA house lives on Past View Boulevard, and the performance improvement house lives on Future Way. QA and PI, QAPI, as we traditionally know it, is oftentimes sandwiched together as one house, like it's a duplex, it's the same meeting. QAPI, QA, and PI should never be the same meeting. QA asks an entirely different question than the PI, and it has an entirely different function. QA asks the question, how are we doing? The PI side of the house asks, can we do better? Again, write down everything I'm writing down. How are we doing? Well, in order to find out how we are doing, let's draw a little graph here. I'm going to draw a little table graph, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you some data points. I'm going to label it. Just going to do January, February, March to keep it easy. And so we can see that we're trending up. Okay, here's the question. How are we doing? Based on the data I just gave you, how are we doing? And you're going to answer, you don't know. You'll be like, you know what? You're not giving me enough information. Like, interesting, but you would use the word information. Because in section 4.1, the question of data and information is clear. It says, how do you use data and information in the quality award program? And so you're going to be asking, like, wait a minute, what is the difference between data and information? And the answer is context. So if I said that this was employee turnover, now you can see that this is actually bad news, because employee turnover best is going down, but we're going up. So this is what we would consider a negative trend. A negative trend. It's a problem. And that's exactly what we would call it. The quality assurance team would identify a problem. Except in quality assurance, in the quality award program, we don't call it a problem, we call it a challenge. And if the challenge is big enough, like it's really going to impact our business, we may consider it a strategic challenge. And anything that we consider let me just move my little word problem up. Look at this technology nowadays, right? I mean, I used to do this. I even have I know that you're not interested, but I even have brackets on my ceiling still, where I used to have a camera hanging from my ceiling and I would write on paper when I was doing this. Now, technology. Anyway, any problem that the quality assurance side of the house would identify, we would identify as a strategic challenge. And in this case, our strategic challenge is, I'm going to just use arrows, too much turnover, high turnover. And what we would want to do ideally is lower turnover, which would become our strategic objective. Our strategic objective is always the opposite of our challenge or our advantage. We could be doing an advantage, and our strategic objective will not be the opposite in that case. I digress. Anytime we identify a strategic challenge, we want to do the opposite, create a strategic objective, which would, in this case, be reducing turnover. The question then is, by how much? And so we'd have to come up with a goal, and a goal is always a measure. It's a number of some kind. It's a DSO, it's a PPD, it's a financial number, it's a percentage. And so let's say, in this case, we're going to keep it a percentage, and we're going to say 10%. So we've identified the quality assurance side of the house has been looking at their data, and they saw their employee turnover rate is going too high. Their strategic objective is to reduce employee turnover by 10%. Now we have this thing called Parkinson's law. And if you're not familiar with what Parkinson's law is, it simply states that the amount of time that you give someone to do something is the amount of time they will take to do it. If I gave you a project that took 1 hour to do, and I said, hey, you have to get this done in 1 hour, you would take 1 hour. If I told you that you had all day to do that same project, ironically enough, you would then take all day, even though it would only take you an hour. Because I gave you all day to do it, you would take all day to do it. That's called Parkinson's law. That's important for QA to know, because of that law, we have to come up with a timeline. It's not enough to just give our identify our challenge, our objective, and our goal. We also have to give you a strict timeline, because goodness knows if we give you too much time, you'll use it. So let's say, because this is the first quarter that we have identified here, the first 3 months, first quarter, this will be the second quarter. Let's say our timeline is by the end of the second quarter. What I just created, or what quality assurance side of the house, their whole job is I just created a set of instructions. This is no different than the turn-by-turn instructions I gave in the beginning of this webinar. When I said, I want you to draw a map, the objective was to draw a map. And then I said, I want you to make 3 stops. Those 3 stops are 3 other objectives. Make sure you stop here, here, and here. And then the one thing I left out and then came back to was the timeline. Wait a minute. You can't even be effective at getting from one place to the other if you don't know what time you need to be there, right? So we had the objective, the goal, and the timeline in the instructions of drawing a map. So you can hopefully see the connection. The whole point of QA is to come up with a set of instructions for who? Well, for our performance improvement team. Our performance improvement team is then going to take this challenge. They're going to be like, okay, we see what the problem is. Let me just erase this so I can draw right here. The first thing your performance improvement team is going to do is a root cause analysis. What the root cause analysis is going to attempt to find out is why. Why are we having such high turnover? And when they do that root cause analysis, they're going to ask who, what, where, when, and these are the ingredients to try to identify the why. Let's say in this instance that the performance improvement team identifies, I don't know, 3 areas, 3 reasons that they believe are causing such high turnover. The next step that the performance improvement team would do is they would start brainstorming. Now, I'm going to take a little red pen. I'm going to put a little star here, a little asterisk. I'm going to underline it twice, only because in my experience, one of the biggest challenges most performance improvement teams have is they skip the brainstorming. I can't tell you how many people I know with all kinds of problems in their organization, but when I go, all right, so what are the root causes? They just they know exactly how to fix it. And I just always think to myself, if you know how to fix it, why are we having the problem? But the truth is, they don't know how to fix it, but they think they do. So everybody just skips brainstorming. Don't skip the brainstorming session. And I'll tell you, when I do brainstorming, we play a game called Ideas That Stick with sticky notes and all that stuff. The point is that we throw everything we can think of at the wall, and then we see what ideas stick, and then we try to implement those. Brainstorming. Do not skip brainstorming. When you are brainstorming, what are you trying to solve? You're trying to solve for all three of the root causes you identified. So you would be brainstorming enough to satisfy all three areas. Now, once you have come up with the three plans, that you would have in place, we are going to follow what we call a PDSA. Now, there's all kinds of problem-solving methodologies. This one is called a PDSA, where we do a plan, we come up with a plan, we do the plan, we study the results of the plan, and then we take action on those results. However, because we're talking about the QAPI and the Quality Award program, we don't actually call them a plan, we call them action plans. Action plans. Now, here's what's really, really cool. If our performance improvement team is doing a good job, they're really worth their weight in gold, we should see over the next quarter, April, May, June, this downward trend. And now I'm hoping that you see that what I just created for you is this line, this dotted line that I called a fence in the beginning, is actually called an intervention line. Again, I hope you're writing this. I hope you're following along. Take good notes. Don't just sit back and listen. And don't be on scrolling either. Well, I see you. This is pre-intervention, and this is post-intervention. The whole point of the performance improvement team is to intervene when the QA team has identified a challenge. The QA team is like, hold on, we're running out of money. Hold on, our customers aren't satisfied. Hold on, our metrics are going wanky. Our performance improvement team comes to the rescue. They're like, don't worry, we're going to get right involved. And every time you see this hump where it goes up and then down, you can be sure that that downward trend is the beginning proof of the intervention put on by the performance improvement team. This is what I just showed you here. This is traditional QAPI. Traditional QAPI. It is a necessary, valuable quality assurance program. It is designed to help you solve problems in real time. And for many of us, that's enough. You know, I got to tell you that I am a little bit of a QAPI nerd. I love this stuff. I could do this all day. I really love it. But I'll tell you how I got here. I didn't get here because I was so focused on systems. I wasn't. What I was focused on was management development. I love management development. If you hang out with me for 8 minutes, you're gonna hear me talk about management. It bleeds through my DNA. I don't know what to say about it. I think about it all the time. I write about it. I talk about it incessantly. Management. I just absolutely love it. And when you think about management, I'm going to just take a quick minute here. If you think about management in a system, there is something called a leadership system. Again, for your notes, there's something called a leadership system. And I'm going to show you how I got to where I am with QAPI, because what I intend to do is to show you how to take it the next step further for a quality award. I'm going to show you how to go from traditional to award winning. Okay, so just bear with me. This is worth it. One of the biggest challenges I find, and it doesn't matter if I'm talking to a brand new manager, if I'm talking to a manager for a long time, when I ask them to tell me what it means to lead an organization or be a manager, I'm like, could you draw management for me on paper? So many people have no idea what I'm talking about. I mean, I literally get blank faces. Like, what do you mean draw leadership on paper? So let me do that for you. This is leadership on paper. Leadership is a system like anything else. It starts with a decision. A decision is made. That decision is then communicated. And then that communication on that decision has to be followed up. FU in this case means follow up for your notes. Just remember that. FU, follow up. Then you have to follow up with that communication. And whatever you learn when you do that follow up is going to trigger a new decision. And that new decision is going to have to be communicated. And any decision that is communicated will have to be followed up with. And then that follow-up is going to trigger a new decision, which will, of course, have to be communicated and followed up with, which will trigger a new decision. Now, what I'm not showing you, or what I should show you next, is what I actually just drew were clocks. Again, for your notes, follow along. It's worth it. If you start working at 7 a.m. and you go till 4 p.m., this is your entire day. Your entire day as a manager is to share the decisions with the person who's doing it, and then following up, how are you doing, which is going to trigger a new decision. It could be the follow-up is, hey, it's great, then it's high fives, let's get on to the next project. Or the follow-up could be not so great, it's like, okay, low five, let's figure out what to do, and again, triggering a new decision. The reason why this is so important and so valuable to see is because once we break down leadership like this, we can actually start evaluating each and every step in the process. How do you make a decision? How do you communicate those decisions down to frontline staff? And most importantly, how do you follow up? There is a pretty terrible statistic out there that is estimated to say that two-thirds of all first-time managers, which, by the way, I think is like the last time I looked it up, it was something like over 5 million people every year in the United States are promoted into a new leadership position, whether it's, going from the super worker to supervisor, like it's a first-time management thing, or it's going from an administrator to a regional administrator, or a regional to a DO, or 5 million of these promotions take place every year, and it is estimated that 2.3 million of them, or 3.3 million of them, 2/3 fail in the first 90%. And again, as a management development coach, which is what I spend most of my time doing, I talk with a lot of managers, a lot of brand new first-time managers. And if we look at this little decision, this little leadership system, and I were to go, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, and I said, which area do you think most managers, especially brand new managers, have the biggest trouble with? It doesn't take a rocket scientist. It is the follow-up. Anybody and everybody loves telling everybody what to do. Everybody loves making decisions. So it's not the decision, it's not the communication, it's the follow-up piece. And what's so interesting about it being the challenge of a follow-up is I can't tell you how many times I hear managers say, and say it with me, I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to look at the grown man. I've shown her 3 times. How many times do I have to show them? I shouldn't have to this. I shouldn't have to that. And I'm always the one who just kind of nods and smiles and waits for my opportunity to go, well, honestly, if we didn't need you to follow up with the employees, we wouldn't pay you. We wouldn't have you. We wouldn't waste the money. Who would waste? Managers are expensive. Like, who would waste the money, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80, $100,000 on somebody who doesn't think they have to follow. Like, I shouldn't have to. You get my point. It's ridiculous. The whole point of management is to follow up. This isn't this leadership system isn't a hope to have. This is a must. Every one of these are important in management. If you fail on any of those, you don't move the wheel of time throughout the day. Your customers don't get happy. The orders don't get filled. The businesses does not operate if you, the manager, doesn't do all three things. So it is very, very important. But when we start drilling down, because I told you what's so great about looking at this as a system is we can evaluate each one of these. That's the best part, right? Because if we can evaluate it, we might be able to find improvements. Evaluating plus improvement equals learning, my friend. Okay, so when we drill down and we go, what is the likely outcome if you were to ever follow up? You're going to find out that there's only two outcomes ever. Whenever you follow up, you're either going to find out that the work was done or it was not done. Those are the only two outcomes. When you follow up, like, hey, I need you to go move those boxes over there, and then you go and you look, did they move the boxes? The answer is the boxes are moved or the boxes are not moved. And if they're not done, if it's not done, there is only two reasons why anything is ever not done. It is either their fault or it is not their fault. For your notes, write this down. I'm giving you gold here. I'm giving you gold. Now, if you're a manager like me, I long for the days when it's not their fault. Give me the elevator broke, the truck broke down, the customer refused the order. Give me the supply chain was wrong. Give me anything but it being their fault. When it's their fault, I'm getting attitudes and eye rolls. And you ever hear that scuffy kind of, it's not a back talk, but it's a loud enough sigh, like, oh. I hear somebody else do that. I swear to God, I want to snap. I hear it so many times as I'm walking away. Oh, I'm like, what? Did a dryer vent just die behind me? What happened? The reason that we don't want to follow up is not because we're afraid of finding work done. And it's not because we're afraid of finding work not done, knowing that it's not their fault. We're afraid of finding when it's not done and it is their fault. That's why we don't want to follow up, because we don't want to deal with the attitudes, the eye rolls, the huffing and puffing. We don't want to deal with it. So now we're going back to QAPI. If we're evaluating this whole process, we're understanding that this is actually about timing. These are actually clocks that we're talking about. Let's say that I gave you a task that took 4 hours. If I decided to check and ask, if I tried to follow up at the 4-hour mark, I am dealing with the consequences. It's done or it's not done. That's it. I've given myself no other chance to do anything about it. I didn't follow up until the end. But if I go follow up at the 2-hour mark, now what am I finding out? I am not finding out, is it done or not, right? What am I going to find out? I'm finding out, is it likely to be done or not likely to be done? Does that make sense? I have just given myself the ability to do what I really want to do, and that is manage. Because if I find out, let's say that you were going to do 4 tasks, and each task took 1 hour. At the 2-hour mark, you don't have to be a mathematician. You know that at the 2-hour mark, I'm going to follow up and go, hey, how are you all doing? How many tasks have you completed? If the answer is we're still working on the first task, then we know we're behind. And we need to still, let's figure out, I can help out. I can get other people to help out. I can move some stuff. I can do all kinds of things if I've given myself 2 more hours. And if I go in at 2-hour mark and I go, what are you guys on? And they're like, oh, we're on our 3rd task. We've already completed 2. I mean, I'm high-fiving everybody. Like, yes, all right, perfect. I'm giving myself, see what's happened is I evaluated the reason, my little pen here wants to travel. Get over here. All right, stay up there then. My iPad I love, but sometimes it doesn't do what I want it to do. Okay, the reason, really? I just did it again. Okay. The reason that people don't want to follow up, if we can understand the behavior behind the reason, that's an interesting thing too when it comes to behavior in management, is that we always have to be mindful of, is the problem that the work's not getting done, is it a skills problem or is it a behavior problem? And unfortunately for most of us managers, certainly in my industry, I work in long-term care, you know, it's mostly behavior. I mean, not even close, like 80% behavior, 20% skill. It's really not even close. Okay, so I said all of that just so I can come back and draw for you the comparison. A leadership system is a decision that is communicated, that is followed up with, which will trigger a new decision. And I told you up here, this whole PDSA, problem-solving methodology, it looks like this. You come up with a plan, you do the plan, you study the results of that plan, which will trigger further action. See, QAPI requires leadership. And once you understand that a leadership system is very much in line with a performance improvement system, you're going to understand that the dynamics here do not have to be reactionary. So again, I showed you traditional QAPI, which is reactionary. There's something interesting about reactionary QAPI too, because again, it goes back to the maturity. It goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning about the maps, and we're seeing how the maturity of the children, the more mature they get, the more they understand their role or the way that their relationship to their house, the more separated they become from it. And it's the same thing in management and development. When I'm working with new managers, I know that not only are they by default reactionary, but they want to be reactionary. I mean, I can't tell you how many times. You ever heard of those firefighters who literally start houses on fire and then they're the ones who discover the fire and they're the hero? Like that complex. Now, I've never been a firefighter and I've not set any places on fire, but I can relate. I have started a lot of management fires, you know, like an impossible task for my staff to not be able to do, or my team's like, we're going to do it this way. And I know that's not going to work, but instead of correcting them or coaching them or helping them in any way, I sit back and just relish in the, well, I'll come and do it. Let me show you, you know, because I want to be the hero. And that hero complex really does transition to where honest to God, I mean this, I really did it. I used to have in my little, you know, in your email signature line, it maybe has like a, you know, dreams will come one day or something, or you might put your job title. For years, and it's embarrassing for me to say this, but for years in my email signature line said that, you know, like occupation, that I was a problem solver. I know. I was young, you know, and I don't mean young in age, I mean young in management. I was young in my development. I was immature. I wasn't as mature as I am now in management development, but it took me a long time to get there, because if you want to be a really effective manager, like I'm talking about the type of manager who people cannot wait to go to work for you. Like people will not have alarm problems anymore, no more car issues, no more flat tires, no more babysitter issues, no more too much traffic. Like you want to eliminate that. Like people would move heaven and earth to come to work for you. Then instead of being reactionary firefighting, your job is not to solve problems, it's to prevent them. Go from traditional reactionary QAPI to, wait a minute, I mean, I know I'm going to have staff turnover. You know you're going to be short-staffed. You know customers are going to be unhappy, and you probably know why they're going to be unhappy. You know, in long-term care, just as an example, we get surveyed by the state. And if one of our customers has a complaint, they can try to come to us directly with their complaint, but oftentimes they don't. Oftentimes they just go to the state, or they'll come to us, they'll give us an opportunity to try to solve the problem, and we don't do a good job solving the problem. They're going like, we gave you a chance, we're going to the state. And so then the state comes in on what they call a complaint survey. And you're not going to believe this, but if the state comes in and they're like, hey, we're here for a complaint survey, if you listen closely, you can hear other managers and other staff members go, I bet I know why they're here. They know why they knew the problem existed. I want to jump through the screen. I'm so excited. And I don't mean excited as a good thing. I mean excited, like frustrated. They failed to solve the problem. They failed to prevent the problem. And they just lived with knowing that, well, one day it'll come up and we'll have to deal with it. There is another problem-solving methodology. I know I don't have a lot of time left. I'm going to try to wrap it up really quick. I apologize. I can talk forever. There's another problem-solving methodology I want you to be aware of. This is important. Most of you probably are. It's called DMAIC, and it stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Improve, and Control. Now, this problem-solving methodology is really more closely linked to like Six Sigma. You might know it from Six Sigma. I'm a big Edward Deming fan, which is why PDSA makes a lot more sense for me, but DMAIC is really, really great. So imagine if I have two houses. I have my QA house and I have my performance improvement house. And of course, I have my fence. And of course, they do live on dead-end streets. And we know that one is a past view and one is a future view, right? QA is a past view. How are we doing, or how have we done in the past? Performance improvement, how can we make it better in the future? You got all that, right? Now, instead of IDing a problem, what the QA side does is they identify a key process. And by key, this just simply means most important, or again, strategic, right? Like really, really important. Key process. They would come up with, what is the objective of this key process? What is the goal or measure of this key process? And what is the timeline? Like when and how often do we have to have it done? Now, this still is a set of instructions for the performance improvement team. However, instead of a root cause analysis, that's not because we haven't identified a problem, we've identified a process. What we're going to do is we're going to evaluate. We're going to evaluate the process. We're going to define and measure and analyze DMA of the DMAIC, the process. And we're going to be looking for gaps where problems do exist or could exist. Is there a way to do it a little faster, a little better, a little cheaper, a little easier? And if is the key word, the performance improvement team does identify gaps, let's say they identify 3 gaps, then they're going to brainstorm possible solutions. I'm going to put a little star next to brainstorm because I want you to remember, it's always the thing that everybody just misses brainstorming, very important. They're going to brainstorm 1, 2, 3 solutions, except we don't call these solutions, as you know, we call them interventions. And then we come up with a plan or an action plan. We do the plan, we study the results of that plan, and we take further action. This goes from reactive to proactive quality assurance. That is about all my time. I do have just like a little, if you wanted to say, hey, you were amazing. I don't take really great negative comments. So if you didn't like it, I'm just kidding. But if you did have anything that you wanted to share, or you found this valuable, I would love to hear about it. And of course, if you want me to come to your organization and do something like this for you with your team, I would love the opportunity. That is it for me, my friends. Does anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns?
Yes, thank you, Ralph. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and we can unmute your microphone, or you can type them in the question box in the control panel.
Yeah, just talk.
I'm going to take the screen back. Again,
all right.
Thank you, Ralph. And if anyone has questions, we'll still take them, but I'll just make some final announcements here. and let you think about those questions you want to ask Ralph. So our next webinar is going to be September 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I am waiting for details on the speaker, but I know our colleague Laura Kinney is working on having the recent Performance Excellence Northwest top tier recipient presented that. And we already have our October one lined up. We have our first international speaker, Dr. Hoda from Saudi Arabia. So we're looking forward to that in October. I want to thank you for attending our webinar today. And if you are interested in starting your Baldrige journey or your performance excellence initiatives, please reach out to one of us with a program that covers the state that you're located in. And here's our contact information. Again, one last chance. If you have any questions for Ralph, this is the time to take them.
I think this just means that I did a really good job at answering all your questions.
I think it does too, Ralph. So awesome job. Thank you so much. And we hope to see all of you next month at our next Third Thursday webinar. Bye, everyone. Thanks.